Driver's Ed, Chapter 10, page 144. Remy Marlin was the first to find out whether she was actually driver educated. The night before, she spent in her closet, deciding what to wear for a driver's test. Twice she walked up to her mother to say, "I can't be allowed to have a license." But she wanted the license, and she let her mother comfort her. "Now, darling, you'll do fine. They don't make you parallel park anymore. Only 24 hours more, darling. It's a rite of passage, and you'll pass with flying colors. I know you will." Remy thought of Denise Thompson's rite of passage. She didn't meet Mac's eyes all night, because he knew too much. Remy had always thought it would be wonderful to be known, right down to the bone, to be understood and loved anyway. Well, it wasn't. The class was wildly excited for her. "Remember, the full stop has to be full," said Chase. "The car has to give that little jolt." "Don't turn on the radio while you're actually driving," ordered Jose. "If you have to touch any control, wait till a red light. They don't like it if you do two things at once." "They'll make you park at Super Stop and Shop," said Alexandra, "where the slots are extra thin, so leave yourself room to make it on the first try." "And at that corner of Warren and Kennedy," said Kirsten. "That's not a right turn on red, even though it looks as if there ought to be, so don't make one." Mr. Fielding, of course, gave Remy no advice. "Don't forget to take off the parking brake," said Taft. "Remember, I'm your first passenger," Morgan told her. "This afternoon, my house. You arrive complete with car and license. I'll be in the road thumbing a ride." He stood between the desks, combining a hitchhiker's thumb with the royal wave. He was so handsome, so perfect. How could it be that the thing they shared was so imperfect? "Give her a kiss," ordered Taft. "Two kisses," said Lark. He kissed her. It was such a careful, gentle kiss. His hand curled in a light fist straight over her cheek and chin. "Do well," he murmured. "Of course she'll do well," said Jose. "She's driven 800 times more than the rest of us." "Which reminds me," said Lark when Remy had left, "all money has to be in this afternoon because Christine's test is day after tomorrow." "Have you ever driven at all, Christine?" asked Taft. "Dad took me out twice. Mom took me out once." "Christine, you can't take the test. Cancel it. Tell the truth." "Since when," said Christine, "did anybody in this class ever tell the truth?" The Motor Vehicle Bureau was the opposite side of the city, between a large fitness center and a discount appliance supermarket. It was just a storefront, as if you might buy shoes there. It hardly seemed possible that in such a building your life would change. In such a building, you would acquire your freedom, or not. Remy curled and uncurled her fingers. In the end, she'd worn the same faded blue jeans and baggy sweatshirts she'd had on almost all school days since September. She felt safe in them, protected by the fleece of the sweatshirt. "You'll be fine," said Mr. Fielding. "You've been an excellent student." How could he know who was excellent and who was not? He'd never looked up. "Thank you," she said. "I shouldn't teach this again," said Mr. Fielding. He rubbed his eyes and rubbed them again. His voice was heavy and loaded. He was not talking to her like a teacher, but then he never had. So Remy did not answer him like a student. "No, Mr. Fielding, probably not." He held the door for her. "Kirsten has the stop sign, doesn't she? Lark had the idea, didn't she? Kirsten wanted a souvenir of driver's ed, the way Chase has his bike path collection. Lines to renew licenses, lines to get boat permits, lines to acquire new plates, lines to ask which lines to get in. But Remy was scheduled and there was no line, no time in which to stand and think. How many in driver's ed were slim blonde girls in faded jeans and baggy sweatshirts? Kirsten, Kristen, Lark, Remy, Alexander, Christine. The switching of name tags had, for Mr. Fielding, actually switched the personalities. It made Remy feel interchangeable, as if the girls were appliances in boxes marked the same, packaged the same, as if whoever bought them would get exactly the same item. Miss Marland? The man was thick-bodied, his glasses like Coke bottle bottoms. He looked like the gork that Mr. Fielding was. I'm Mr. Barth. I'll take you for your test. Mr. Fielding dropped into a chair. She stood before the computer terminal, 30 questions. She tapped her answers quickly and got 26 right, a solid pass. It was difficult to feel thrilled. It was difficult to feel anything. She could not even feel the sweatshirt fleece now. Mr. Barth led the way to Remy's car. He got in the passenger seat. Remy got in the driver's, fastened her belt, started the engine without grinding it, took off the parking brake, checked the rear view mirror, backed out, circled the lot. She could not even feel her fingertips against the wheel. She, like the wheel, was made of plastic. Let's turn left onto Macy, said Mr. Barth, and go straight for half a mile. Macy had red lights every block, parallel parking, and hundreds of shops and businesses with entrances and exits. Remy slowed for people opening doors into her half of the road, for cars turning without signals, for yellow lights in the distance. And now let's turn down Wellstone, said Mr. Barth. This led past an elementary school, but at this hour she would not have to worry about buses emptying or little kids dashing out under her wheels. And now on the interstate, said Mr. Barth. She got on the interstate. Would Mr. Fielding go to the police with his guess? Or to Mr. Thompson and the reward? Or would he let it drift? Maybe he'd gotten it off his chest by speaking to Remy. Why me? Do I give off an aura of maturity? Or was it just timing? Mr. Fielding reaching his limit on keeping secrets. And exit here, said Mr. Barth. Oh, how she'd love to exit, get off this problem. But there was no exit. And let's park between that Cadillac and that blue van. Remy slid into the space. But since Kirsten didn't do it, they can't prove anything. Besides, somebody like Kirsten would just elbow her way out. She'd be okay. Except, who could be okay after an accusation like that? From a sturdy source like your own driver's ed teacher. People would say Kirsten just got away with it, had a good lawyer. And Kirsten's parents, her family, would they get over it? Remy did not know Kirsten's parents. Some parents were very visible. You tripped on them continually from kindergarten through 12th. Other parents might as well not have existed. Good work, Mrs. Marland, said Mr. Barth, opening his door. You have passed your driver's test. They were back at the Motor Vehicle Bureau. She had no recollection of coming back, no memory of traffic or road. Mr. Barth and the test might as well not have existed. Congratulations, said Mr. Barth. Tilt your chin up, said a bored, wrinkled woman at the photo counter. She tilted her chin up. Hold still. She held still. They'd probably do police mugshots like this, she thought. That lawyer told Morgan that kids with no priors don't do time. Right now, I am a person with no priors. The license was given to her a moment later. A small plastic rectangle, her picture on the left, vital statistics on the right. She held it by the top and right side, and then the bottom and left side. Permission to begin adulthood. Her license. Her ticket out of childhood. She looked at that girl in the photo and knew then who had reached a limit on keeping secrets. She and her teacher went out the door and across the pavement, and as they opened the doors, she said quietly, I took the sign, Mr. Fielding. Just give me tonight to tell my parents. She knew she had never looked at Mr. Fielding, never before seen this person who was half bald, whose tie was old and shiny, whose leather belt was scratched and stretched, and whose shock was complete. He had to steady himself on the car door, her own car in which she could now chauffeur her brothers and, of course, kill people if she had a free evening. Matt came home, dropped his books exactly where his mother told him every day not to, went into his room, and shut the door carefully behind him. The hardware clicked into place. Mac was always gratified by the thickness of his bedroom door. He lay down on his bed. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't move toward his new comic book or his new Stephen King. He just lay there. Mac loved doing nothing. He thought about his sister. Mac had expected that little word, reward, to bring Mr. Thompson the information he needed to find Remy, but nothing had happened. Remy might slip by. Mom and Dad had little awareness of news. Their own life seemed to fulfill them enough that they could skip both city and world. Eventually, the wrecked car would be towed to a junkyard. People would forget, spring would come, and Remy'd be safe. She might be safe anyway. Remy did not have the strength to have cut that metal post. Nicky and Morgan, therefore, had actually committed the crime. She was an accessory, or maybe just a bystander. He felt as if he had been lying on the bed all these years for good reason. He knew how to think. Thinking was a valuable skill, and people didn't do enough of it. His sister knocked on the door and came in. They never used to go in each other's rooms. He used to hear rumors about families where the brothers and sisters were friends, but Mac had certainly never given them credence. Now that she was the bad guy, he liked her. Being rotten and worthless used to be his job. It was nice to pass the torch. Remy sat on the edge of his bed. Mac fluxed his advice molecules. "I told Mr. Fielding," said Remy. "He was blaming other people. I think he was getting ready to go to the police. I'll drive to Morgan's, let him know what's happened now, and then come home and tell Mom and Dad." Mac's brilliant mind emptied. He had no advice. He had no ideas. He could think of nothing helpful. "I'll stay when you tell," he said finally. "Maybe it won't be so bad." His sister shook her head. "It will be so bad, Mac. It'll be worse." "What about Nicky?" She was frightened by that. "What about Nicky?" she said carefully. "He was there. He's the one who actually chose the sign." "No," said Remy. "It was just Morgan and me." "What? Why are you lying about that?" Mac was incredulous. "Remy, trust me on this one. Let them take the blame. You're just an accessory. You just sat in the car and waited." "Shut up," said Remy. Her eyes were very bright and slightly crazed. "You are about to have a great privilege. You are my first passenger. I am your legal licensed driver." Morgan had posed in the middle of Farmington Avenue, legs spread, thumb up, jacket unbuttoned, wallet full. 2 people in her car. He couldn't believe it. Remy'd brought her brother along, their first drive together, her first solo flight. This girl he was crazy about, and Mac was here? "Okay," he told himself, "we're dropping Mac off somewhere. I can live with that." He wanted to kiss Remy, feather light, the way he had in school. Promise of things to come. In front of Mac, he'd rather kiss roadkill. Morgan ran around to the driver's side and tapped on the window till the new driver rolled it down. "Let me see it," Morgan demanded. She handed over her license. "Hot off the laminator," he said, grinning, stroking it. "You look great. It's a good photograph, Remy." He stuck his head through the window and kissed her upside down. It was easy to kiss her even with Mac there. She was so pretty. He tumbled around with love, wanting everything perfect for them, wanting the sun always to shine, and "Look at this," shouted Morgan. "Rembrandt Marlin. I don't believe it. You used your real name?" "You have to. They make you. You have to bring 2 forms of ID with your birth date. I had my birth certificate and my baptismal certificate. They both say Rembrandt Valerie Marland." Morgan laughed. "How'd Valerie get in there? I mean, with a first name like Rembrandt, you'd expect a middle name like Renoir or Monet. Why'd she call you Rembrandt anyway?" Remy's laughter turned to tears. "Because she wanted me to be great," Remy said. "She wanted a daughter who was different and great." Morgan thought she was, and also beautiful. And I told Mr. Fielding, Morgan, and now I'm going home to tell my parents what their great and different daughter is really like.